Boom. Okay, here we go. We have people joining, which is awesome. Um, Manank, if you can let people in as they're joining too, that would be great. If not, I'll keep an eye on it as well. But we can get things started. Cool. Okay, welcome everyone. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, good to see you. If you are here with us in the Zoom room, even better. You will all be able to ask your questions and get things out in real time. If you're watching on LinkedIn, Manank and I will start to share the Zoom links as well. So feel free to come and join us here in the Zoom room. For everyone that is in the Zoom room, I see actually as of right now, there's already like 20 of you, but none of you have your cameras turned on. I don't want to be that guy that forces you to do it, but I'm kind of going to ask you to do it if you can, because like the whole reason why we want to host these in a Zoom room like this is so that we can see you guys and so that you can be here, ask questions, and be involved rather than it being like a typical webinar where you're just like tied behind a chat box kind of thing. Okay, cool. A few of you are turning on, which is awesome. Thank you, Adrian, Celine, Ramsey, Atif. Good to see you all here. Cool. I am going to get things started. So today we have pretty special guests with us for the second in our series of like live AMA sessions. I'm not going to do like a super big corporate style intro because I think if you're here, you probably know who Kevin is already. But we're going to talk a little bit about SEO, content, organic growth into 2024 and 2025. Ask him some questions. I have a bunch of things I want to find out. I'm sure a lot of you here have a bunch of things you want to find out as well. Kevin, maybe for those, if there is anyone watching like the recording of this or on LinkedIn right now who doesn't know who you are, to be honest, I didn't know like how to start with an intro because I can start to share some of the like really cool companies you've been involved with, but there are so many, I don't know which ones to pick. So like leading SEO at Shopify, that's pretty cool. Like being involved, Dropbox is pretty cool. G2, like a bunch of these others. How do you intro yourself now? If someone's like, hey, what do you do?
Man, I always struggle with that. And by the way, thanks for having me.
Oh, of
So,
course.
how would I intro myself? Essentially, I'm doing two things that might be interesting for the audience. One is I advise companies, as you mentioned, like Dropbox, Hims, Reddit, Snapchat, Nextdoor, etc. The other thing I'm doing is I'm writing a weekly newsletter called The Growth Memo, where I share some of my observations, lots of data. It's essentially premium SEO research. It helps people make better decisions and understand the SEO landscape in a better way. Those are essentially the two things that I'm doing. And there's, could probably ramble for a long time, but I don't love talking about myself that much, and I'm sure the audience has better questions. So very excited for to answer some of those.
Cool. Yeah, we can move away. You don't have to talk about yourself. Don't worry. Let's kick into things. Okay, for anyone that's just joining now in the Zoom room as well, go ahead, turn on your camera, like unmute yourself when you want to ask a question, but don't be that person that's gonna like leave yourself unmuted the whole time and have a load of noise in the background. But if you have something to ask, please like do it, jump on the screen, wave at me a little bit if I don't spot you, and I'll call you up. Kevin, I want to get started with like, okay, this last year or couple years, probably the topic and the thing that everyone is asking you about and leading with is like the impact of AI, not just in SEO, but in marketing in general. So I'm not going to ask you what you think of the impact of this because it's a pretty shitty question that I'm sure you've been asked like a hundred times already. But what I do want to know from my perspective, like I run a performance marketing agency. We work with 30 SaaS companies right now, have some really great clients, but I don't know anything about SEO, right? Aside from what I see and read on like Twitter and on LinkedIn. Something I wanted to ask you, when I see all these like SEO bros or like tech bros on Twitter that are flexing like screenshots of all these extra 100,000 visits that they've got from all of their AI generated SEO focused pages and programmatic SEO and different items like this. Does that actually work? Is that a real thing?
Yes and no. Um,
Okay.
so look, um, I think you can make pretty quick progress with very mediocre content in very uncompetitive spaces, right? So if you, for example, write about horoscopes or I don't know, some like definitions of very basic terms or that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of traffic volume behind those things, and it's very uncompetitive, I would say. So there are these spaces, and that's a good space to test some stuff out, right? I don't want to diminish that altogether. But the real question here is, if you are a Fortune 50 company, or let's just say a Fortune 1000 company, it doesn't even have to be that, right? If you are a public company, um, do you have efficiency gains from AI, right? Should you leverage that? So there's always going to be the, type of websites that somebody spins up to test, or that, to maybe make some affiliate money or some drop shipping. That's one area, right? And you can probably, again, with very mediocre AI content, drive some traffic there. But the question is, how does it work for um, other types of businesses, bigger businesses? And in this case, I would say there are legit use cases where you can use AI to create content. I've done it with a bunch of companies, a bunch of the companies that I've mentioned, actually. And you can get pretty good results. But it doesn't work in every case. And it certainly isn't a 1 minute thing. It certainly isn't a prompt where you say, write a blog article about, you know, um, let's just pick a real example about how to advertise a car dealership business, right? Like that's not going to work. The instances where it works really well is when you have very clearly defined guidelines. For example, a glossary would be a really good example, right? I worked with Ramp. Ramp is one of the fastest growing fintech startups in history, and we built a glossary for accounting terms, and we built the majority with AI. Now, I'm saying the majority because I think it's important to understand that AI is especially good at building a foundation. And then you probably want humans to make it really good. But that's where legit efficiency gains can come from, right? That's where companies save money and time and can act faster. And so there are a bunch of other instances where you can use AI to create content, but also to improve content sometimes, or to mine data and create better content on top of that. So, bottom line here, there's some real efficiency gains to be had from AI. It can really speed up your work. And it is not yet this turnkey solution where you write one prompt and then all of a sudden it builds a whole website for you, right? It's very targeted, specific gains.
Right. Okay. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you for that. And so like let's say this doesn't necessarily have to be AI related or not, but let's say someone's watching this right now, or someone maybe in the Zoom room. We can even take like a real world use case in a minute, but let's say they are maybe a solo marketer at a seed stage or series A stage SaaS company or something like this. There's so many different things on their plate of like, okay, um, should I be expanding out our ads efforts? Should I be doing more with organic and content? Should I be looking at influencer partnerships or other things? There's so much that's going on, right? And the what feels like sometimes the easy option could be, okay, let me lean into AI to spin up a bunch of new blog posts for us, put them on the website very quickly, etc. If someone does that, are there risks associated with that that you like truly know about right now? Because I know a lot of it is like we truly don't know in a lot of these cases either, right? I see it on Twitter of like people that had a bunch of traffic, then suddenly it all disappeared. Like, are there any risks like that that you would say to someone, hey, like let's not let's not go down that route first. Instead, let's focus on using it for efficiencies, optimizations, and things like that instead.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because on the one hand, you can create really bad AI content, whether that's
Mhm.
text or images or videos. And on the other hand, I think most people would be really surprised how good some of the AI content can be if you invest the time. So both is true at the same time. And it depends a little bit on the effort you put in, the prompt you put in, maybe the tools that you use. But there's a startup that is in a very technical space. They do real time analytics for basically infrastructure analytics. And we created I would say 80% of the content with AI. And it was really, really good. And it was so good that I went to the CMO and I asked him I presented him two articles and said, okay, which one do you think is written by AI? And he couldn't tell the difference. And I actually
Mm.
recently ran that experiment on Twitter as well. Was a bit, a bit controversial, but I essentially presented my Twitter audience two AI written pieces of article and asked them which one is written by an AI and which one is written by human. But the point is that nobody, I think maybe 3 out of 100 people understood that both are actually written by an AI. And
Nice.
so if it's done well, the difference is hard to understand. However, to address your question, there are risks. There are risks, and I think these risks are not very different than the risks that you get if you try to scale um, content written by humans in a very sloppy way, right? If you outsource it to, people who maybe take a few cents or maybe a few dollars for an article, and they don't put in the work, and they don't do the research, etc. I think that can lead to the same outcome where your traffic goes away or users have a bad experience. And so the question is, no matter who creates the content, how do you monitor whether it's a good experience or not? And I think that's the bigger question, and it can really help you in terms of AI. So some things you can do, for example, is to measure if people scroll through the article, if they read, how much time they spend reading the article, and if they take action. So you could, for example, run an experiment where you say, okay, we have a blog, maybe it has, I don't know, 100 pages on it. They were all created by humans. Let's publish 5 or 10 articles created by AI, and then measure the difference in engagement with the articles that were created by humans. And that gives you a little bit of a gauge or a little bit of a feedback signal to understand whether the quality is good enough for users or if you have to put in more work.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Really great advice. Thank you. Like I see Manank is typing a few things in the Zoom chat as well. Like in short, keep bad quality content and bots away from what you're doing. Okay, like I have a few things. Let's go. I've got like a notebook full of questions here, but I want to make sure we open this up AMA style and format like we promised. And to be honest, the last session that we did of this is where it was most enjoyable. So we have few people in the Zoom room. A few of you have your cameras on, which is great. A few of you don't. If you want to ask a question, let's do it this way because there's probably going to be a couple. So if you could put your hand up, like either your real physical hand if you want to do that, or in the Zoom section, there's like the hand emoji that you can use. We do this at Hey Digital when we have like questions, and I'll take them in the order that they come in. Okay, so first one, Atif, let's go to you.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Dylan. I think a question for Kevin here. I've been doing SEO for B2B space for a brief period as well. And one thing that I've noticed, Kevin, is when we initially started, B2B was all about traffic, getting the most amount of traffic, worked great. The conversation then shifted to bottom of the funnel keywords, and then it transitioned onto your competitor pages, alternatives. It moved on to your AI content. So I'm just trying to understand what is the next big thing with regards to a B2B SaaS. Because when I'm doing SEO for clients, I feel it's a lot more to do with regards to your uh, positioning, your USP, which is very specific to a client, right? And not a lot to do with regards to SEO per se. We could have a number of tactics, but I don't really see something significant happening within the B2B space. So just curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Atif. Thanks for asking that. So I think all of the things you mentioned are powerful, and it would probably still do all of the things you mentioned, right? Uh, Starting with a strong bottom of the funnel competitor or compare and alternatives pages, maybe some AI content. And then one thing that I'm seeing happening more and more is a convergence between quote unquote SEO content and product marketing content. So what that means is, I mean, SaaS is incredibly crowded. And even if when new, I mean, right now there's lots of tectonic shifts happening due to AI. So new industries and markets are opening up. But even there, the competition very quickly grows. Just look at like how many AI writers there are. And there are many great of them. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm just saying like it goes really fast. And so one critical aspect that companies need to lean into in that environment is differentiation. So how are they different from everyone else? That doesn't always mean that they should not write about the same topics from an SEO perspective that their competitors write about, but it does mean that they also need some content that helps them stand out from the crowd. And that content is not always optimized for search. It can be things like data stories, right? Like here's some reports on the AI writing industry, or here are some best practices that our clients have created from a content perspective. It's not always easy to optimize it for a for a keyword. and you might not always want to. So I see as a kind of evolving trend, and especially B2B SaaS, that companies lean more on what we might call thought leadership, what I would call probably more product marketing, where they mix search optimized content with more pieces that are not addressing an exact keyword, but that are really interesting for their target audience. And so key there is obviously to talk to your customers, understand what excites them, what problems they have, and what they're really curious about. And then you find these topics where they're like, yeah, you know what? I actually just want some inspiration. I just want to see 10 examples of what I can do here, or maybe 10 things that I should avoid. And maybe there's a keyword like the, AI content examples, but oftentimes it's not. And I think it's that space that is interesting, that moves the needle, but that is a bit difficult sometimes to quantify in terms of impact because you don't have the search volume. And that's where that's where you have the advantage of being a young startup, where you don't need to opportunity size everything and put everything on the scale, but you can take a couple of bets and risks and create that type of content. And that typically works really well.
Right. And I think, Kevin, what about distribution? Because usually startups, small scale, do not have a lot of distribution. So they might be okay with n number of channels working out for them. But should you quantify that saying like, hey, you got X amount of referral traffic, even though that could have later contributed to SEO? Should you be going to that level of reporting, or should you just stick to just SEO it's only?
Good question, Atif. I think it's hard to benchmark because several options work. I don't think there's a perfect playbook. I think there's several. And so I think the question much more is which channel to start with and when you know whether that channel works for you or not. And so SEO, unless you're in a very new and evolving industry, has gotten insanely competitive. And I actually am not sure if it's the best channel to start with. I wonder if sometimes, more webinar style content, video content can work better. Sometimes even social content. I've seen more companies that grow on social again. Not as It's more like a Kickstarter, right? Like igniting the fire rather than keeping the fire going. But I see some good founders posting some really good stuff on LinkedIn and Twitter, gaining a little followership, and then getting some early customers. And it can work really well because it is founder led, meaning the founder has a very direct contact with the audience, which helps the founder to then improve the product. So I think there are several ways, right? SEO is one way. And the more important question to me is, at which point do you either decide that the channel doesn't work for you, or you decide that the channel is maxed out and you need to expand into another channel? So a good combination that I'm seeing a lot more again is starting on social, and then starting after that has traction and you got some customers, then to move more to an SEO type of approach. And then you carry over a lot of lessons that you got from social and the interaction with your customers that can then turn into really good SEO content as well. So sometimes it's actually better to go, to spearhead with direct contact first.
Gotcha. I think that I'm taking too much of your time, Kevin, but just one last thing. Are you a fan of last click, or are you more leaning towards multi-touch? What do you think is a better reporting?
I think the best attribution from an SEO perspective, right? If I was a CMO, I might think about this differently. From a pure SEO perspective, I think the best attribution is probably no attribution. Most of these models are flawed. There's no perfect one, and a big part of this is because a lot of companies use Google Analytics for attribution, and the look back window is capped at 90 days, meaning you really just look at touch points over the last 90 days. And when we talk about B2B SaaS, especially on the enterprise level, those buyer journeys or customer journeys just take a lot longer than 90 days. So distribution is inherently flawed. If I was a CMO and I would look at multiple or many channels, I would probably look at a multi-touch attribution model, something mixed. And I would cross-reference that with some self-attribution. So asking customers at the end of the purchase funnel how they found the company or so on, right? The question is always, what purpose does attribution fulfill to you? And I think attribution is actually most useful for paid channels. I think it's more flawed for organic channels. And so if you think about, should I shift, 10% of my budget from Google search to YouTube or to Meta or TikTok or something, I think then attribution can really help you find the answer. But in order to find and commit to marketing channels to grow a company, I don't think it's always the most useful.
Kevin,
Great.
I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased you dropped that line of like the best attribution is no attribution, because I was sat on that. I was like kind of hoping you were going to say something else so that I could drop that line. Like Manank and I have talked about this before, and in my content we've talked about this too. I think the biggest challenge, like it's easy for people like me and you to say that, but then the people that are like sat in the shoes as a CMO or a VP of marketing that has to report back into the CEO or something, it's a fucking nightmare, right? But it's very it's very interesting because we've been talking about this a lot ourselves recently. Because even from the, to be honest, even from the paid ads perspective, attribution is still fundamentally broken and flawed. Like, yeah, it can help you with making better ads decisions, of course, but at the same time, like I just look at our LinkedIn ads account, like we're for ourselves at Hey Digital. If I disregard the learnings across our client base of all the SaaS companies we're working with, and I just look at our own data. It's like, for example, my LinkedIn ads account tells me that it's been responsible for 3 calls being booked with us over the last like 4 months or something, for maybe 12K in spend or something like that. So based on that, it's pretty poor results. When I look at my answers on the forms for like, where did you hear about us? LinkedIn has drastically larger impact than this. When I look at an attribution reporting tool, it's like the impact of LinkedIn ads is absolutely massive to our bit. It's like they're basically like 4 different data lenses I can look through that all tell a completely different story about the success or the failure of a channel, even though the output and the outcome is exactly the same. And that's like, the more we have these discussions, the more it's like, this is such a fundamentally broken area within marketing, but it's like, what the hell can we do about it right now? Not really that much. So I'm always falling back onto like, okay, how can we use the data that we do have available and visible to us to help us try and make more informed decisions and tell better stories, but at the same time, just trying to almost like manage up to our leadership team, if we have one, of like what marketing actually is. Like, how does marketing even work? Like, when we ask them the last time they purchased a software product or anything, and ask them what was your buying process for that, they're probably not even going to be able to tell you the answer. They're not going to say like, I remember seeing this exact one blog post, and then I clicked from that blog post and I booked a call, and then we ended up paying like 6 figures a year for this SaaS product, right? So this is something very interesting to me as well. I would love to jam a little bit on what you said about the like founder-led content as well, but I think we can maybe come back to that in a sec, because I know we have people here that want to ask you questions as well. But I could share some learnings from what we're doing, what some of our other clients are doing as well, and even how you can do that organically, but also amplify it with paid spend without having to spend like a ridiculous amount to still have really significant impact. But let's see, do we have here in the Zoom room? I know we have a few other people that are in here as well. We have, I'm just looking, it seems to be right now there's 20 of us in the Zoom room. There are 35 people watching on LinkedIn. So we have about 50 odd people here live, which is great. And I know a bunch of people will see this afterwards as well. Someone that's watching live, do you have a question? Like, if you're in Zoom, put your hand up. Okay, cool. I can see Adrian, we have you. You want to go next?
Happy Friday, guys. Thank you for having me, Dylan, and hi, Kevin. So considering we are heavy in the AI era, what are the new SEO KPIs? And by the way, sorry about the squeaking. It sounds much dog is going berserk with a true toy. Sorry about that if you heard it. What are the new SEO KPIs? Because practically measuring organic traffic, yeah, of course we measure that, and keyword rankings, that's a bit old school. What matters nowadays for B2B and both B2B and B2C?
Yeah, it's a great question, Adrian. And happy Friday to you as well. Thanks for calling in. Here's my thinking about this. Since we're still in a transition, I think it's hard to shift completely to new metrics and focus only on them. I think it's a balance between looking at old metrics and new metrics. Some of the new metrics that I'm looking at very specifically is referral traffic from different LLMs. So you can, in your Google Analytics, get the referrer from ChatGPT, Perplexity, and some of these other bigger LLMs. So I would just measure how much traffic is actually coming through. And can I see if some of that traffic actually converts? Right now, in the companies that I've looked into, traffic is pretty small at this moment. So it's not yet meaningful enough. The other side of the coin is, can I understand how visible I am in some of these chatbots? That's a bit more tricky, but you can do a couple things. One is, especially for ChatGPT, you can use the API to just run a couple of prompts yourself. So you can literally, there's a Google Sheets integration with ChatGPT, and you can define maybe 100 keywords or so. Maybe you already track them from an SEO perspective. You turn them into prompts, or you just measure the keyword, and you see what comes back from ChatGPT, and then you see if your brand is included or not. And you can repeat that every week to kind of get a trend over time. So these are some very tactical things you can do to understand, are you mentioned or not? Because the experience for the prompt should be the same for everyone. The question is, are people using the prompt? And that's the missing piece right now. You don't know how many people are using which kind of prompts. In SEO, we kind of know how many people use a keyword. From a chatbot perspective, it's much, much harder. And so the only way that I see to close that gap right now is to actually talk to some of your customers and see, hey, are you using chatbots? Do you recall any of the prompts you have been using? But that is a little bit of an open gap. Another, or a question mark, better said. Another way to figure it out is, if you monitor the referral traffic from these LLMs, you can see which URL they go to, and then make assumptions of what type of prompts people use. So then you can say, hey, people go to my, I don't know, blog article about topic X, right? Then you can say, okay, maybe people use these types of prompts to land on that article, and then I monitor these types of prompts myself. But it is not a perfect system. It's a lot of assumptions, and it's the best that we have right now.
Kevin, I wanted to ask about that a little bit too, actually, because like I'm looking at my own personal behaviors now for when I'm researching stuff. And I know I'm not basing like the whole market just on how I do things, but if I do things this way, there must be a bunch of other people that also do things this way. Like my go-to now when I'm searching for something, actually before I go to Google, I use Perplexity. I really enjoy using Perplexity. It's like really great for me for research, for other things like this. Do you have, outside of what you just shared, because I know you kind of just covered this a little bit, but is there anything, I don't know, like really practical that we should be thinking about as marketers where we can try and position ourselves ahead of others to be, I don't know if we even call it like ranking there sooner than others or whatever, but I'm just trying to think, there's clearly there's an opportunity here at some point, and trying to identify how we make use of that. Because me running a paid ads agency, it's like, okay, the first thing I want to figure out, and I'm constantly monitoring, is like, how can we like, what's the ads network going to look like on Search GPT, on Perplexity? Because there's not a world in which that doesn't happen. It's going to happen at some point. So I'm like trying to figure that out from an SEO perspective and from an organic perspective. Is there anything else that you're doing, either with your clients, with people that you're talking to, where we're like, you've identified some kind of opportunity to get ahead there, or is it just purely what you said a few minutes ago as well?
Yeah, so one thing that's really critical when it comes to visibility in any of these chatbots is what I would call your web footprint. Web footprint essentially means, how often is your company or brand mentioned across the web on news sites, YouTube, blogs, and any web page you can go to, right? How often is it mentioned, and in what context is it mentioned? Now, it's still tricky to monitor that. There's some tools, I can list them if you want, that can help you get an approximation of your web footprint, but it's essentially how the dimensions of your brand across the web. So you can even use some like PR tools for that, but they're often pretty pricey. So the reason I'm saying that is because two things. One, you want to be part of the training data for chatbots, right? If you're part of the training data, that means you can be considered part of the answer. It's not guaranteed, but it's your best shot. If you're not part of the training data, then you cannot be mentioned as an answer. It's that binary. The other reason is because chatbot makers or LLM makers are forging more partnerships with publishers to use their content to give fresh answers. And so you want to, besides just mentioning your broad web footprint, also mention your footprint in these specific partners, right? I think Wall Street Journal is part of this, but a lot of the News Corp properties, etc. You'll find a list on the web. I wrote about this in my growth memos as well. So right now it's still a list of like 15 biggish companies. And over time, this will probably expand. But you want to monitor your footprint, especially on these properties, because there's a higher likelihood that they're being used for fresh answers, and therefore that your brand is being mentioned in that specific context. There are also some new tools that are spinning up. I think HubSpot just launched an AI grader, which is really interesting. I haven't really stress tested the tool yet, but that also gives you an approximation of how visible you are. Take it with a grain of salt, right? I'm not exactly sure how the tool works, but there are more tools spinning up that help you understand these kind of things.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm going to go to a question that we have actually in the live chat on the LinkedIn stream where this is happening in the LinkedIn event page. So we have a question from Nihal that says, can you share some insights on programmatic SEO and how creating free tools has helped drive more traffic when compared to blogs or landing pages? I'm actually pretty curious about this myself as well, because this is another, like I say, my SEO knowledge is not strong. I'm basing this just on what I see on LinkedIn and on Twitter. But I definitely see a lot of posts about people that are churning out free tools at scale as well. And I've always been curious about this. Is this a playbook that's still working, still worth spending time on, or am I 6 to 9 months too late on hearing about this kind of stuff?
No, this still works. It works really well, and I expect it to work for a long time.
Okay.
So here's what I mean. Generally, if you think about your experience on Google, any web page that allows you to solve a problem on the spot provides a superior experience to a web page that teaches you something, right? So very tactically, if you use a lead generation tool to write a mission statement or get some suggestions for mission statements for a company, that is obviously a much better experience than a blog article that teaches you how to write a mission statement, because you can just solve the problem on the spot. And so tools, free tools that can do this for you are incredibly powerful. They will always, if they fulfill their promise, right, they will always outrank blog articles. And so with a lot of my clients, if there is a demand for a need that we can satisfy with a tool, we'll build little lead generation tools. Oftentimes, they will require an email either to get the output or to be used, but sometimes you'll also get the output for free without an email, just like as a tastemaker, if you will. And so mission statement, that's actually something that I've built also with Ramp, the company mentioned before. We've built a mission statement generator. It still ranks #1. And if you look at the rank history, it ranked #1 in days because the experience is superior to any of the other content, which is all blog articles. And because Google wants people to solve their problems, right? That's why they come back to Google. So you want to be on the lookout for these tool opportunities where you can build little widgets, calculators, quizzes, or generators to help people solve a problem. And again, the cool thing is that this will sustain over a long time. Because it can solve your problem. So even if, let's just say over time, Google was replaced by LLMs and chatbots, I'm not saying this is true, but let's just assume, then even that would be a superior experience to send users to if they're using an LLM. So I think this is very sustainable, and you essentially want to turn this into small little mini products. Now, the cool thing is that marketers can build these things more and more themselves without technical knowledge. First, because there's a lot of no-code platforms. Outgrow is one that comes to mind that I've been using with some clients. There are others as well. Don't want to pick favorites. And then the other thing is that with AI, you can be so much more technical, right? Anybody can write code now with AI just by naturally prompting the AI what they need to code for and what the use case is. And so I think with that powerful combination, no-code tools plus AI, leaves little room for excuses not to build some basic tools. They need to look good. They need to be easy to use, right? And you cannot gate them too hard. Otherwise, people will just go to the tool that provides more free value. But that is a more powerful way than teaching people how to do something and to drive organic traffic. And it converts at a higher rate too.
Okay, nice. I'm going to ask a slightly selfish question about this because I have you here and I'm running this session, so I'm going to take some of your time for for a minute. We have a very small SaaS product of our own that we run for different experiments, and I use it myself every day. That's called Poststrips. So it's like AI powered content writing tool specifically for LinkedIn. So most people that are here on this session, they've found me most likely through my LinkedIn content. I use a tool to support me with writing posts, with scheduling things, everything else like this. Now, we use it as a little bit of a playground for some tests and experiments, but it's a very small product. It doesn't have a dedicated team. It's literally like me, and we have a freelance contract developer that we use for it. So it's nothing significant. And that means it doesn't get much time dedicated to it from a resource perspective. A couple of the pages on that site that generate traffic for us right now, we have like a LinkedIn video downloader, for example. Like you can't download people like videos that people post on LinkedIn natively on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn video downloader. I think we have like a headline rewriter or something like this. So I have a list of maybe 10 or 15 different tools like that somewhere that we like could build and could create. And so I'm thinking about getting to those later or sooner based on what you've just said, actually. But I wanted to ask you, with tools like that, should there be a balance between like longevity and potential virality? And I'll give some context to that. So yesterday I was on LinkedIn. I saw a video post that someone did, and it was like them showing a tool that had roasted their LinkedIn profile, right? And so a micro tool like this has so much virality potential. Would it make sense from an SEO perspective to build tools that are focused on short-term virality potential? Or should we, if we look at things like that, should we look at it just as, okay, it'll be pretty easy to get 15, 20 creators creating a video about this, posting it on LinkedIn, and that's where the value stops? Do you see where I'm coming from? Like with those, do we focus on longevity or short term? Because I think with, like you said, with the rise of the capabilities that we have now, for like I could literally build a tool like that myself very easily now. So I'm curious if you measure those things up as well when you're looking at like the tool opportunities.
100%. I think the most important question is whether that virality can turn into customers, right? Is there a fit between those tools and the product?
Right.
I'm going to be honest, the mission statement generator was an experiment. And I was very fortunate that Ramp is incredibly quick to execute. They're fantastic team. And we weren't sure how well it was going to do, because creating emissions, I mean, for context, right? With Ramp, you can create a business credit card, you can monitor your expenses, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's like a finance solution for businesses. And at first, we weren't sure if creating a mission statement was maybe too early in the user journey, and whether people would then start the business and get a credit card from us or an expense solution. It turned out that for that to be the case, but it was a bit of a jump in the beginning. And so you always want to validate if you can, or at least have a very tight logic around whether that virality and that attention and traffic can actually turn into customers. At Shopify, it was very, very similar. So we had a business name generator, and creating a business name is a critical step when you set up your online store. And so that drove a ton of business for us. And so for the LinkedIn roaster, which is a cool idea, right? I can totally see how that goes viral or went viral.
Yeah.
I think it would be a better fit if I had a tool that optimizes your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Right? I think there is a natural fit. But for a SaaS tool that creates maybe LinkedIn posts or ad campaigns or that kind of stuff, I think I'm not sure if it would translate into customers. And so, first of all, you want to argue through that and reason through that. And second of all, you want to see if you can maybe validate that in some way. Maybe talk to some people, maybe run a smoke screen ad campaign where you don't really have the tool, but you see how many people click the ads. So I think you want to get more conviction that this will actually turn into business. And then any virality is awesome, right? But I think it can also very quickly turn into wasted effort where you get a ton of attention, but it doesn't translate into any dollar.
Right, for sure. Okay, cool. Thank you. So we had this AMA in for like 5 more minutes. I know we're going to have a few more questions as well. So I want to be respectful of Kevin's time too. Let's do one more question for sure, and then we'll see how everyone is feeling. The first hand that went up was Brandon. I've seen you like put your hand up a couple of times, Brandon. So let's go to let's go to you.
Sorry, just wasn't sure if if my screen was working because
No, all good.
it's actually an old laptop, so it's cracked yesterday, but yeah, I won't bore you with the details. Anyway, yeah, my name is Brandon and I'm from Malaysia, so it's actually night here now. So great to see you guys. Yeah, so I was thinking about what Kevin was talking about during the first question. Like we were talking about diversifying B2B, diversifying platforms for B2Bs, right? So I'm not sure about the US, but in Malaysia, we still have this very traditional approach. Like whenever we approach maybe a client wanting to do SEO, like with my agency, we'll always start off with Google first, and it's like just one of those memes that just slaps a sticker on that that aquarium tank. Boom, Google everything. Boom, Google. And I'm starting to think that that tactic doesn't really work anymore these days because not. I mean, as SEOs, maybe I think we could have like shoehold ourselves into just being that Google guy or being that that Google specialist, but when in fact we could actually be an organic specialist, like looking beyond just Google, like I don't know, maybe starting first on LinkedIn, and then maybe testing it out there, like what Kevin was saying earlier, like starting it out on a social platform first, and then after we've gotten some more awareness, then only taking it to Google. Do you see like this? I'm not sure. Do you see this happening in the US or in other countries where other SEOs are adopting this approach, or is it just, or is it still not really a thing yet? So just a question that came to mind.
Yeah, and just to be sure I understand correctly, the question is, do you see more of this kind of creating buzz on social and then taking it to SEO? Did I get that right?
Yeah. Not necessarily on just social, but it could be any platform in general. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
totally. Look, I absolutely agree with you that as SEOs, it's easy for us to just focus too much on some like very SEO specific things and completely forgetting that SEO is a channel that catches demand, and that demand has to come from somewhere. And matter of fact, I actually think that for a couple of years now, we're witnessing that you need to also stimulate some demand for especially your brands in order for Google to rank you well for even non-branded terms. I see that more and more. When people specifically search, for example, for Shopify business name generator, the chances of Shopify ranking #1 for business name generator increase. Same for e-commerce or other terms, right? We saw that relationship. And so I think you're absolutely right. And I think for too long, we've just, as SEOs, kind of sat back and enjoyed all the demand. And that's changing a little bit and has already changed. So we need to collaborate more with departments that actually generate demand. And it goes a little bit back to that point I made in the beginning about product marketing, right? I think product marketing has a growing influence on SEO insofar that it's a critical way or critical motion to stand out in a large crowd, and hopefully get more demand from people, right? And so the short answer is yes, I think that's become more critical. You see some of these things sprouting up here in the US as well. And I think it doesn't yet, I don't think there's like this broad awareness for this yet. And there is not this playbook yet, right? Where one company went out and did that and did something differently, and then I saw these massive results. So long story short, yes.
Sorry, I won't trouble you with too many questions. It's just one last one, and then we could move on from there. Yeah. So thanks for answering that. So yeah, it's good to know that I haven't missed the train and that this trend hasn't caught on yet. So thanks for that answer. And also, since we're talking about like diversification and diversifying platforms, like, do you see like us SEOs like being asked to go into spaces like social media, SEO, like I don't know how that would work with the social media team because it's their domain, right? Especially with organic social, like we can't just like edge in there and be like, hey, I'm gonna do your job for you now. Like how do you see that happening, since like, you know, especially like SEMrush, I think, has been posting lots of blogs about TikTok SEO, YouTube SEO, and then now you've got things like Search GPT coming up, Chat GPT, Amazon, and yeah, do you see like this, you know, becoming like a regular, you know, to do for us in our job scope, or is it like still, you know, it's not going to take off kind of thing?
Yeah, I see that as a regular to do. Absolutely. YouTube, I think, is the closest planet to SEO, and there's a natural carryover. There's actually a lot um, of similar search trends. So I write these deeper dives into industries and companies on the paid growth memo. And what I see there a lot of times is when I compare search demand across a large set of keywords on YouTube versus Google versus TikTok, it's very often very similar, right? And so the question, I think, is how to interface with other teams. And so, to your point, I think coming in and saying this is what you have to do is a bit tricky,
Yeah.
unless you own those channels as an SEO. But I think you can provide a lot of useful data from an SEO perspective to incentivize these teams to do certain actions. And so I think the most tactical use case is to say, hey, there's so much search demand for this keyword on YouTube, but we don't have a video on it. Can you guys go out and make a video and we embed it in the blog article as well? And you link to the blog article from the video. So we have a bridge between those. And let's just capture this demand. On TikTok, I think it's absolutely also possible. The interesting thing about TikTok is that it has both. It has an actual intent behavior, or sorry, intent driven search engine where you type something in and you get results based on your keyword. And it has that behavioral component where, based on whether you swipe or like or comment and all these other actions, you get different content. So I think there is a real opportunity to capture search demand on TikTok as well. But these social platforms are not very interested in sending traffic out. So you have to approach them with a different mindset. They're not performance channels.
Right.
They're more brand building channels and have like an aggregate indirect effect. So I think the one question is how to approach teams and then how to measure success as well.
Or we could also just do it ourselves, right? As SEOs, like doing it on YouTube or TikTok ourselves without that.
Yeah, if you can, absolutely, man. Quick anecdote. And by the way, Dylan, I can go a little bit over just to let you know.
Oh, okay,
But
cool. I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, I'm going to stop. Yeah, that's my last question. So sorry
all
about
good,
that.
all good. No, I can go until the full hour if that's okay.
Okay, cool.
But a very quick anecdote from G2. So at G2, our biggest competitor was and is Capterra. And there was and still is a very critical keyword to win, which is CRM software. It's really important. And for the longest time, Capterra was ranking in a YouTube video carousel, almost at the top of the search results. And the video that they were ranking with was this 10-year-old video of a guy in front of the whiteboard who was just sketching out what a CRM is. And that got so much attention and so many likes and so much traction. So in some cases, that can actually work. I think, though, in most cases, you need a well-produced video to rank.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thanks
sorry.
for the question as well, Brandon. I appreciate it. So let's do this, Kevin. If you're cool to run over for a few more minutes, to be honest, I don't think I'm going to ask you another audience-based question, just because we'll probably run out of time if we do things this way. So I'm going to ask you a quick, direct question in a second. And then there are still quite a few questions that came through either on LinkedIn or in the meeting chat in Zoom as well. So I would recommend, like, if anyone has follow-up questions or things like this, you can reach out to me. I'm sure you can reach out to Kevin directly as well. Let's do a couple quick announcements just whilst we have everyone here, because Kevin, if I get you to answer one more question and start wrapping up, people are potentially going to leave us. So we do have one more live session, AMA, like this coming up actually in a few days' time that I would love to invite everyone to who is on this session. I'm going to put the Zoom registration link for it in the Zoom chat. If you're on LinkedIn, Mayank from my team will share the registration link there. We're doing a session with Mark Killens. I'm sure a lot of you know him from LinkedIn. He was at like Drift before, a few other really great companies too. And we're talking all about like GTM and this like people first GTM model and how so many companies are approaching GTM in a bit of a broken way. I think GTM is like such a topic of conversation on LinkedIn all the time in the SaaS space. So I just wanted to bring someone on so that we could talk about it, decode it a little bit. So would love to invite a bunch of you who are here to that session as well, if you're able to make it. Okay, so we have a few minutes left before you need to leave, Kevin. So thank you for running over. Really, really appreciate it. What would be if someone, like, let's think through the lens of, hopefully, and I think most people on this call are SaaS marketers or B2B marketers or in the B2B or SaaS space. If there was one test or one experiment that you would, and I know you need a lot more context to say whether it's going to be successful or not, but if there's like one thing that's interesting for you right now that you're trying or that you've seen that you think more people should be aware of, what would that be?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two. One is Reddit has become incredibly powerful in search. Last year in May, Google launched an update that essentially increased the visibility of forums significantly. And since Reddit is the largest forum, they gain a ton of visibility. They get about as much traffic right now as Amazon and Facebook, which is crazy. And you want to get a good understanding of the conversation on Reddit about your market and maybe your product even, or your brand. So there are different tools you can use for that. Gummy search is one that I can recommend to see what your audience talks about when they mention your product or your market. I think that's really critical to understand what people say, and you can address that in some of your content. I think that's a powerful way to actually create content that your target audience really cares about. The other thing is an experiment that is a bit more tactical, which is that I think it's so important to refresh and update content. And I just, without giving too much guidance here, I just want to encourage everyone to try refreshing some old content on their blog. Of course, it has to make sense, right? It's not enough to just like rewrite some sentences so they're different, but to actually update some content. Maybe there's some outdated information. Maybe there's a point you can make clearer. Maybe some graphics or images you can add, those kind of things. That is one of the most powerful levers in SEO right now, period. It's just up-to-date content. And Google has become so much more sensitive to fresh content that, again, I see big traffic gains from that. So I'm going to leave you with that. The experiment there would be to just, like basically before and after, see what it does when you refresh that old content.
Nice. Thank you. The gummy search thing that you mentioned, we signed up for that like a week ago, and we've been using it for content ideas, like from a organic perspective, video content, things like this too. And that's been like really, really awesome. I even think there's value to a tool like that for, even if you're not trying to use it to create content, but just to like understand your customers better a lot faster. It was like very interesting to me to just find a very straightforward way to see what everyone is like saying and talking about in your space. It's like, definitely recommend this. Even if you're a marketer and you're trying to get into the headspace of your users faster, of course you can do customer interviews and things like this, but they're not always the easiest to set up. They're pretty time consuming. You should still be doing those too, but something like Gummy Search can kind of give you a good middle ground. At least that's been our experience with trying that too. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm also just a sucker for a SaaS product. I'm like, that's my kryptonite almost. It's like signing up to all the SaaS tools. It's a problem, but I'm aware of it and I'm talking about it. So that's the first the first stage, right? Okay, cool. Thank you, dude. Thank you so much for joining today. This has been really great. Thank you to everyone who had questions, whether you were here in Zoom, whether you're on LinkedIn. It's been really great seeing so many of you in both of those places as well. Kevin, finally, like if someone wants to just keep up to date with your stuff a little bit more, what's the best place to do that? Is it your like growth notes at the moment? Is that where you're sending people, or something else?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. And thanks again for having me. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Growth-memo.com is the best place to start. That's where I share my thoughts, research, observations. And then I'm still on Twitter. I'm on Threads. I'm on LinkedIn. So hit me up.
Nice. Thank you, man. And for anyone in the last like 2 or 3 minutes, for anyone who is thinking about the content piece that we said a little bit earlier on, just like one thing that is crushing it for us right now with the founder-led content, both for myself and some of our clients, is the whole founder-led model for sure. We can maybe do a separate AMA on this, but in the last like 2 2.5, 3 weeks. Short form video on LinkedIn that is like mobile format, so like mobile phone screen size format. The impressions on this content is like out of control right now. This content seems to be served to a lot more people. I think it's tying in with LinkedIn's rollout of the new video feed that they're going to be adding to the mobile app. Some of you may already have it, some of you don't have it just yet. But for context, like my personal videos on LinkedIn previously were averaging between 5,000 and 7,000 impressions. My last 3 videos have been 106,000, 95,000, and 220,000, for example. Nothing has changed in terms of like editing style, type of content. I think these like mobile first videos are just being pushed to a lot more people right now too. I know a lot of you may be a bit nervous about going on video, worried about having to be high production or other things like this, but I'm running a test with posting another video later, which is just literally going to be a clip from a Zoom call. It's not high production or anything. And I'm like 90% sure the impact is going to be the exact same. So if any of you are feeling brave, I would love to encourage you to push a few videos out there too. You could use Gummy Search, for example, or any of the other things we've talked about to get some content ideas and make it relevant for your customers, for your users as well. If there was like an organic play, and then you can boost that with thought leadership ads on LinkedIn too. But again, we can do a separate session about the ads playbooks as well. Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining. I really appreciate all of you. Kevin, thank you for coming, for running over the time as well. Your time is very valuable, so thank you. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your Friday, good start to your weekend if you're at that time already. And hopefully we will see you for our next session with Mark next week as well. Awesome.
Thanks,
okay.
team.
Thank you, everyone. See you. Goodbye.